My name is King County Councilmember Girmay Zahalai, and today I'm joined by my colleagues on the King County Council, small business owners, union leaders, fair wage advocates, and workers to announce my proposal to increase the minimum wage in unincorporated King County to $18.99. Everyone standing with me here agrees that no person working a full-time job should be struggling to survive. No person working a full-time job should be struggling to pay their rent, to feed their kids, or to cover their medical emergencies. But for too many people in unincorporated King County, this is their daily reality in a region with an astronomical cost of living. The minimum wage here is Washington State's minimum wage of $15.75 per hour. An employee making $15.75 would have to work 103 hours every single week to afford a modest one-bedroom apartment here in King County at fair market value. Two working parents with two kids trying to meet their basic needs on $15.75 would fall into debt by $36,000 every single year. To add insult to injury, if you are a worker in Skyway and you walk one block north to Seattle, you would make $3 per hour more every single day. If you walked one block west to Tukwila, you would make $3 more every single hour, every single day. A little bit farther south to SeaTac, and you would make $3 more every single hour, every single day. We do not want to create a situation where neighborhoods like Skyway become islands of poverty. White Center cannot become an island of poverty. Vashon Island is an island, but we don't want it to be an island of poverty. If unincorporated King County were a city, its 250,000 residents plus would make it the second biggest city in King County. Let's make sure these residents have the protections at least equal to their neighboring cities and increase the minimum wage to $18.99 adjusted with inflation. And let's be clear, we all understand for small businesses, increasing the minimum wage suddenly can lead to a lot of very real challenges. That's why my proposal gives employers with 15 or fewer employees a long ramp-up period with gradual increases over 6 years. This feature and many others will be negotiated and subject to change in the next coming months. The ordinance that we're announcing today is just a starting point. We will work with unions, we will work with workers, we will work with small businesses and advocates and my wonderful colleagues on the King County Council in order to continually shape and optimize our proposal before taking a final vote later this year. Because we have so many perspectives, I'm excited to share the podium today with a community of awesome people. First up, I want to introduce my colleague, a champion of unincorporated King County who represents White Center and Vashon Island, Councilmember Joe McDermott.
Thank you, Girmay. And let me begin by saying I agree. We want to keep Vashon an island. But more to the point today, raising the county's minimum wage really is a no-brainer. And I'm proud to stand here with Councilmember Zahalai, my council colleagues, so many community partners, including labor, and stand here with everyone as a co-sponsor of this legislation. According to the Economic Policy Institute, a family of four, two parents and two kids, needs to have a household income of at least $110,000 a year to maintain a modest, comfortable life here in King County. At least. And to spare you the mental math and the finger counting, that's over $26 an hour for each parent needs to make while working a full 40 hours a week. 52 weeks a year, no unpaid time off during the year. We've got to move the ball forward here in this region, and now is the time to do that in unincorporated King County. And we know that people of color, immigrants, women, and others who have been historically harmed by systemic inequalities, racism, sexism, homophobia, and more, will be the first to benefit from an increased minimum wage. We don't need a bunch of data, research, and policy papers to tell us what we already know. We see this, we know it's the reality, and we know who will benefit from an increased minimum wage. but thanks to the courageous work of efforts to raise the minimum wage here in Washington, starting a decade ago in the city of SeaTac, and then expanding to Seattle and around the county since then, the research, data, and results from those efforts confirm what we already know. Further, a patchwork of different rates doesn't serve our region well and becomes confusing to everyone. Raising the minimum wage is simply good for our economy and sends a crystal clear message about the values we hold in King County, that everyone is welcome, everyone deserves to live, work, and play in this beautiful region. The minimum wage needs to be a livable wage, and that's good for our economy and our families. This legislation is a strong step in that direction, and I'm proud to be a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember McDermott. My goal today was to announce the minimum wage, but I have a second goal, and that's to highlight the amazing small businesses right here in Skyway who don't get as much love as they deserve. And now, because we have all this media attention, I want to introduce you to Personal Touch Barbershop right here, Nevzat's Coffee right across the street, Mai's Vietnamese Sandwiches right down here. And right now, joining us today to speak is the owner of Royal Life Boutique, Sabrina Ford, who is also an awesome community member and a big advocate for our community. Sabrina?
Thank you. All right, guys. I'm going to take this down a little bit because I'm a little shorter than they are. So, I know I got 3 minutes. I'm going to work that out. But I also want to not forget Muhammad, who helps our youth for the driver's school right there. He's really good that works in the community. So I'm going to start this off with, my name is Sabrina Ford. I am the business owner of Royal Life Boutique, and I'm also over the 501c3 R&R Outreach. And what we do is we made a major impact in this community. One, during the time when all the doors were shut, we were able to keep ours open because we were feeding the community. We started out with 150 people. We went from 150 people to 3,000 people, and we're still high in numbers. That's how many people need some service, need some increase, need some help with their financial, their housing, their just taking care of life in general. So I wrote a word down that came to me. It's called oppression. And I wrote the meaning: control, abuse, a region shattered by oppression, slowly killing your own people. And the reason why I chose that word is because $15 and some change is not enough. And even the increase that we're asking for, which is basically $19, it really still isn't enough, but it's better than $15. And I'm sure you all would agree with that. And on top of all of this, I'm speaking on behalf of the small businesses that are not in hospitality, and no disrespect to hospitality, but they get tips. So they get the increase that's over the $18.99 an hour. I'm talking about those of us that literally are busting our butts to keep the doors open to serve your aunties, your cousins, your uncles, your nieces, your nephews, and guess what? You're just one hop skipping away from being caught up in the same position. We never know when we're going to lose what we got. And that's why this is so important to get out and vote for the increase. But remember, don't hurt hospitality, because hospitality gets more than $18.99 an hour. I really want to focus on the small business owners who are literally like our nail shop, like our faux shop, like our school, our barber shops. We literally need your help to really increase this. Everywhere is growing up. Nothing's going down. So in this season, I'm looking for a breakthrough, and I hope you're looking for a breakthrough, because this is not only affecting one person, this is not only affecting one color, this is affecting everybody, and the number will not stop or change unless we do something about it. Signing off.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. Next up, I want to call up an amazing advocate for unincorporated King County, Rebecca Sabata from Skyway Coalition and also the Unincorporated Economic Alliance. Rebecca?
Sorry. Yes, my name is Rebecca Zapata. I'm a passionate community advocate and executive director of Skyway Coalition. Skyway Coalition is a community-driven organization founded and stewarded by several local serving organizations and leaders. Our nonprofit is building on decades long of advocacy that has been happening across Skyway. We are committed to engaging in a collaborative model for neighborhood development through relationship building, trust, and collective impact. Our core programs are advocacy, affordable housing, and economic growth. We want to see a diverse, civically engaged community that uplifts the voices of those that are most impacted by the systems and policies that are not built to serve communities of color. We aim to engage and empower our Black, Indigenous, and families of color to be a part of the planning and decision-making that impacts Skyway. Skyway Coalition supports the recently introduced legislation to raise the minimum wage across unincorporated King County. Skyway has faced a legacy of neglect for far too long, with inequitable policies that have disproportionately affected our BIPOC residents. Raising the minimum wage mitigates some of the harm directed toward this community. We also have broad support for our current advocacy efforts led by our White Center and Vashon unincorporated partners. They've begun to champion equitable outcomes in raising the minimum wage, including calling for tailored and phased implementation for small businesses, community-led oversight mechanisms, and a strengthening of business support services, as well as ensuring that trusted organizations are included and compensated for our integral work as we support implementing the legislations across our communities. Skyway Coalition looks forward to ensuring that our BIPOC communities and business owners' needs are prioritized as we collectively finalize this legislation. Thank you to our beloved community of Skyway for continuing to make your voices heard. Thank you for our partners who continue to stand and push with us. And thank you for Councilmember Zahalai for pushing this important initiative forward on behalf of our communities. Sure.
Not taking questions yet, not taking questions. We'll take questions at the end, Kevin. Thank you so much. Next up, I know Kevin. Don't worry, I know my brother. Next up, I want to introduce Danielle Alvarado, Executive Director of Working Washington and the Fair Work Center.
Okay, Kevin, I'm ready for you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Danielle Alvarado. I am the Executive Director of Fair Work Center and Working Washington, two organizations that over the past decade have worked to improve quality of life for workers across the state. We've led and worked in partnership with many of the people here and organizations here to pass some of the best protections we have in the country for minimum wage, access to sick time, and expanding the protections we have here, setting the bar not only in SeaTac in Seattle, but also nationwide. And we, in addition to advancing new policies, we have really dedicated ourselves to making sure those policies are made real for people by enforcing those labor standards alongside workers, focusing especially on the workers who are most likely to have their rights violated at work, workers of color, immigrant workers, young people, queer people. And on behalf of the workers that we organize, we're so proud to stand here today to express our support and enthusiasm for the ordinance Councilmember Zahalai has worked on with so many of us for months and is putting forward in this coming week. And we're appreciative for that leadership because it really is a crisis of affordability that we are tackling today with this policy. Like others have said, we need to do more, and this is a critical step to make sure that workers in King County are not being left behind. Increasing pay for the lowest wage workers is not just a minimum wage policy, it is a housing policy, is a child care access policy, is a health care access policy. And when we make sure that every resident in our county can afford rent, can meet their basic needs, can meet their children's basic needs, we are setting the tone and making very clear what it is that we stand for as a county. And this ordinance is about righting not just economic justice wrongs, but also addressing the racial inequality that we know is reflected in our economy. We know who is doing the lowest paid work, and it's our responsibility to make sure that those workers have the most investment from us when they really need it. In addition to immediately improving quality of life for thousands of workers in unincorporated King County, the county being clear in its leadership on this issue sends a strong message to other local elected officials, inviting them to think about what else can they do for the workers in their jurisdictions. And seeing the county play a strong leadership role to me is incredibly exciting as we think about what is our approach as a region in the next 5, 10, 20 years to making sure that this is a place where all of our workers are thriving. This policy builds on what we have learned over the last decade. We are thinking smart, we are effective, we're thinking about what have we learned about making sure policies cover every single worker, that it thinks not just about pay, but access to full-time work. How do we protect workers to make sure that they can bring up issues at work and enforce their rights under the ordinance that we've passed? We're taking a really clear, important step and stand today as a county. We're so excited to work with Councilmember Zahalai, with the co-sponsors and the rest of the council to make sure this change becomes a reality this year. Thank you.
Next up, I want to introduce Sarah Sharon of UFCW 3000.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Sarah from UFCW 3000. We're the largest private sector union in Washington State, and we're really proud to stand here with Councilmember Zahalai, who, when asked by folks in the community and labor folks to help ensure equity in our minimum wage laws in King County, he didn't flinch. Like us, Councilmember Zahalai understands that when all workers do better, we all do better as a community. This proposed ordinance will be good for union and non-union workers alike. I stand here proudly with many of my labor allies today with this ordinance, in support of this ordinance, and this provision will help give a raise to workers who are making minimum, and also support union workers who have contracts like ours which guarantee a certain amount over minimum wage. Just to the north of us in the city of Seattle, where minimum wage workers make today $18.69 an hour. And just to the southwest of me is SeaTac, where voters there kicked off the movement almost 10 years ago. Minimum wage workers earn today $19.06 an hour, the highest in the nation. And just to the south of me is Tukwila, where over 82% of the voters less than a year ago, 82%, passed a boost to the minimum wage, $18.99 an hour. That covers more than 10,000 workers at the South Center Mall. But where we stand today in Skyway, like other areas of unincorporated parts of King County, the minimum wage is $15.74, roughly $3 less than every city bordering us. If you ask a minimum wage worker at a retailer in White Center, like some of our grocery store workers there, or Skyway, what else could they provide for their family with an additional $3.50 an hour? That's what this campaign is about. It's ensuring equity for working families, that they have what they need to take care of their daily needs. This doesn't just benefit workers making minimum wage. Some of the tangible benefits all of our communities benefit if something like this passes. Better employment rates, because workers know that they can go across the street and make $3 more an hour in Seattle. They'll stay here and work. More consumer spending. When workers have more to spend, it means small businesses have more business. Lower poverty rates, which means more workers can afford food, rent, and childcare. You know, we're lucky to live in this region and a state where the question of raising the minimum wage is a settled question. Voters have spoken loud and clear. And we are not persuaded by arguments that big businesses make. I'm definitely persuaded by the ones small businesses make, but by businesses about skies are going to fall and small margins and harmful impacts. We've moved past those, but we will always stand by community and champions for workers, like we're doing here today with Councilmember Zahalai and the fellow members of the King County Council. We look forward to this process. We look forward to passing this ordinance and supporting this win for workers and the community. Thank you.
Just two more speakers, everybody. Next up, I have the honor to introduce a local boy, a young man who graduated from Dimmitt Middle School just down the block, and now he's a King County Council member, Rod Dembowski.
Thank you, Gurmai. Go Vikings. It's great to be back in Skyway, and thank you all for joining us here today. My name is Rod Dembowski. I represent North King County on the King County Council, District 1, and I chair the Transportation, Economy, and Environment Committee, One of the main thrusts and focus of our work in the economy section of that committee is to have a fairer economy, a more just economy that lifts folks up and lets them achieve their full potential here in King County. And this legislation to lift the minimum wage up for the 250,000 residents of unincorporated King County fits within that philosophy. I'm an honorary? Am I an honorary? I'm an actual co-sponsor, but I'm honored to do it. I want to thank my colleague, Councilmember Zahalai, for his leadership in developing this legislation and developing the coalition to pass it, and I'm confident that it will make its way expeditiously through the County Council and be adopted. If you go to the MIT Living Wage Calculator, it's a very handy online calculator that looks at all counties around the 50 states in America. You can see why the state living wage, minimum wage, which is the second strongest in the country, is not enough and not good enough for residents of unincorporated King County. If you're in Grays Harbor County, a living wage is $15.07. So $15.74 can help cover those basic needs. If you're over in Stevens County, they calculate a living wage at $14.76. Again, the state minimum wage helps you cover those costs. In King County, a living wage is $22.77. Our cost of living is simply higher here. And you heard Sarah Charon from UFCW talk about what that extra money means. And I will tell you from personal experience, when we ran the hazard pay boost during the pandemic, we paid grocery workers in unincorporated King County a premium of $4 an hour. And the stories that came in to our offices about what that meant for frontline workers, how they were able to do better by their kids, how they were able to make that car payment, how they were able to maybe just go out to dinner once or twice a month. The stories were compelling and meaningful. And I know when we adopt this legislation, those stories will be replicated in the thousands for all residents of unincorporated King County for years to come. You know, this legislation builds upon some work we did several years ago when we tied wage for King County workers and for our contractors to what was then the highest living wage, the Seattle living wage in the county. And at the time when we passed that ordinance at the county, there were naysayers. They said, well, you're going to drive up the costs and you're going to put folks out of business and you're going to really be a burden on folks struggling to get by. The fact of the matter is, in the 7 or 8 years since we've had that law in our books, it's done a lot of good. All of the good that you've heard today, we've seen it. This legislation will improve that legislation. It will tie us to the highest at $18.99 and really extend those benefits. So at King County, we work on all of our policies through an equity lens. How can we bring people along to achieve their full potential and everything that this county has to offer? You can't do it when you're struggling to pay the bills and pay the rent and just get by day after day. This investment in workers is an investment in our economy, and it is an investment in opportunity, and I'm excited if it comes to our committee. I don't know, if Joe, if it's going to be your committee or mine, but either way, we're going to get it passed quickly. Thank you for the opportunity to join you today. Go Dimmitt Vikings.
Thank you, Rob. And finally, our last speaker, Councilmember Cole Wells, who has been a champion for unincorporated King County, passing a suite of tenant protections, eviction prevention programs in unincorporated King County, and most recently, the cashless prohibition payment system. Councilmember Cole Wells, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Zahalai and my colleagues and all of our labor partners, community partners, small businesses here. I have to say, over my time in public office, which I believe is now, I'm now in my 31st year, I've seen the cost of living just skyrocket all over. And I have that historical perspective that many of you may not have. But just like our other speakers, I am very pleased to support this legislation and also to be a co-sponsor of it. We need to make sure that people can afford to live. I mean, that is just number one. And when that doesn't happen, There are health problems, there are family stability problems, there are public safety problems, just problems across the board. This legislation is so needed. Now, I'd like to give a little bit of a history lesson, too, and for my labor partners here, they know this very well. We do, in fact, have the highest hourly working wage in the country, but it's not good enough, and it's really depressing to think about that in other states. But even though it's tied to inflation and it increases every year, I think this year was a 2% increase, we are in a situation where people cannot afford to have a single job, especially if they are the single pay earner in their family. But even with two wage earners, it's very difficult. I can remember vividly, and I'm sure some of our labor partners here will remember that. In 1998, 25 years ago, the voters of the state approved minimum wage tied to inflation. So there's a COLA, it goes up every year. The legislature, and I was in the state senate at the time, does not have to decide how much to do it, if they do it at all. So that was revolutionary 25 years ago. And I think that many of us, I may be the oldest person here today, but I think many of us can still remember a time in which we were ourselves barely making ends meet. And I certainly remember that. The stress is significant. I was a single parent of 5 children, 2 of them twins, and I struggled all the time, even though I was in professional so-called positions. It was extremely tough. Now, people need to be able to be paid reasonably. And I would like this legislation to go higher, to go further. But we have to really think about our small businesses and have a gradual phase-in for small businesses. But more money in hand helps those workers who do not, hopefully, have to go get a second job, put their health at risk, not see their families as much, not have a time to rest, not be able to be assured of health care expenses. So this is what's so important about this legislation, to help individual workers and families stabilize, plan for the future. We know that we live in one of the most beautiful places in the whole country. Environmentally, it's also one of the highest wealth places in the country. Yet we are finding a too rapid increase in economic inequality. People are having to move further and further out, more expenses for transportation. They can't afford, as has been said, even a small one-bedroom apartment. This, to me, is appalling. And as Councilmember Dembowski brought out, with COVID, we really had a demonstration that many low-wage and essential workers, such as grocery store workers, are a vital and often undervalued part of our communities. So we were able to provide that $4 an hour increase. But what happens now? High inflation, a lot more expenses, not getting that $4 increase an hour. So I believe, as a council member who represents a corporated part of the county, my district's in Seattle, not in unincorporated King County, but we all need, all of our council, our citizens, our business community, everybody, to be able to do what we can to support workers across the region. And unfortunately, 250,000 of our residents are getting left out. So I enthusiastically, completely support this legislation. And I thank all of our labor partners, my colleagues on the council, our small businesses, community members who will get out there and help us get through the council. Thank you, Councilmember Zahran.
All right, everybody. I want to thank our media partners for being here. Thank you so much for helping us get the word out. We appreciate you. Thank you to our labor partners. Thank you to my colleagues on the King County Council. Thank you to the small business owners who are here. Thank you to our staff and to the advocates for coming out. And to the kids of Sabrina. Where are your kids at, Sabrina? There you go. Thank you all so much, and we look forward to talking to you more about raising the minimum wage in unincorporated King County. I appreciate you all. Thank you. Thank you so much.